Good morning. Oh, I made it. Okay. Today is the 15th of November, 2018. This is the nybbles.io daily programming stream. My name is Jeff. I write code every day, and sometimes I stream it here on Twitch. Sorry I am late, but didn't have power. We're in the middle of an ice storm here. My car literally was entombed in ice this morning when I went out to it. That was interesting. Also, as I mentioned the other day, I wanted to try to solve some of the performance issues. Hey, VoightComp Phil, that I've been having, and some of the weird, device issues like audio dropping in and out. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm using USB devices, and everything was running on the one laptop, and it was tapped out with OBS and Sea Lion. And so I have two laptops now, one of them dedicated to running OBS, and that's all it's doing. And it's running at about 12% CPU right now. I'm doing a screen capture from my development machine. Hey, Synox. I will warn you, the screen capture device I have is a little flaky. I need to get a better one. And what was I gonna say? Yeah, sometimes, like, I've noticed it glitches. If it does, I can get it to reset. So, but yeah, I'm looking for a better alternative there. But otherwise, everything else should be mostly the same. I am trying to stream at a higher bit rate. We'll see if that holds fairly constant, because I know some folks were complaining about skips and jumps and things, and I think with the low latency, and I was streaming at a lower bit rate there for a while. Hopefully this will work better, but bear with me because I may have to look to the left here because the laptop that's running OBS is to my left, and then silly me, I forgot to hook a mouse up to it, so I'm gonna actually have to reach to get to the trackpad. But and if I plug anything USB in right now, the capture card will flake out. It's like anytime something changes on the USB bus, the capture device goes nuts. So yeah, I gotta get something better for that, but this should work for now. Anyway, so where did I leave off? What did I do? I don't even remember how much I've talked about or anything, but well, oh, I know. Okay, so the last time I streamed, I had gotten up to the part where I was doing the translation for procedure calls for the tagged symbols, and I had refactored this, and then after the stream, it dawned on me, it looks dim, okay? Yeah, I guess it sort of does. It's hard for me to tell here because of the lighting, but I guess it does look a little dim. I'm not really sure why that would be. Let's see. Are there any filters? No. I don't have any scaling filters. I don't have any deinterlacing filters. Now that you mention it, I do notice it does seem a bit dim. So I'm trying to figure out why. There's no color on it. That is really strange. What would be making it dim? It's a mystery. Now I'm curious. Hey, Soding. Oh, I wonder. Okay, I have a theory, but so the way I'm doing this is in OS 10, you can group displays together so they mirror. So this display is the Acer, and I've got that paired with the capture display because it shows up as just a normal display. But so this is the capture display, but I've got this set up. God, if I do this, it's probably gonna glitch. We'll try it. Yeah, because it glitched. But it came back. All right. Because see, unfortunately, the USB device does not have any brightness settings on its own. Yeah, and I gotta lower the refresh rate on that because if I don't, it'll yeah, and that's the other thing, right? For the USB device, the color profile may not be yeah, I think I may have to do it in OBS actually. I think Soding is right. Because I don't know if there's anything I'm going to be able to do on this end. All right, let's try that. Let's try filter, add. Would be a game, right? This is, I'm gonna run into the limits of my, oh, wrong one. I didn't want that. Color correction. I just want a gamma improvement, right? Gamma. Go brighter. You guys tell me when you think it, how's that look? Is that better? Is that too bright? Hard to tell. There is a slight delay I'm noticing when I'm watching myself here on Twitch, so now I have a filter on here, so I can increase the gamma. So if it's, here, I'll actually bump it up just a little bit more. Oh, well, that's the other thing too, is I did not apply any scaling transform this time. Let me do that. And I am trying to, you know, stream at a higher bit rate on a connection that, I mean, it seems to be doing pretty good. And according to Twitch, it's healthy, but all right, so I turned up the gamma a bit more. Actually, you know what? Let me not do that. Let's put the gamma back, because I just noticed they actually have a distinctive brightness setting. So let me try that. That's way too bright. Maybe about right there. Okay. That looks brighter to me now when I'm looking at it on Twitch. So we'll go with that for a while and see if that's better. If it's too washed out, let me know and I'll turn it down a bit. Okay, so, okay. But the contrast could be better, of course. All right, let me, higher or lower contrast? Yeah, I'm gonna say a bit lower. I don't want to turn it down too much. Okay, so I tweaked the contrast just a bit. So hopefully that's, I mean, it does make it a bit dimmer when I adjust the contrast, so. Well, it was definitely pretty dim, but. All right, let's try to do that. So brightness, and then on the contrast, let's just go up a bit. Yeah, actually, I think Soding might be right. Good call, Soding. You are a genius. Right about there, at least to my eyes. That looks pretty good. Let me know if that's better. Or I'm sorry, that was VoigtComp Phil that mentioned the reset the brightness and go with contrast. Let me know if that looks better. That looks better to me. That's brighter and everything's standing out now, so. Yes, okay, awesome. Yay, we did it. Yatta! All right, so where was I? Right, so last time I streamed, I had reworked this to evaluate the symbol because in the element builder, that's what I just added code to do that, but so we had that make symbol from node, right? And what I realized was the reason I was doing it the way I was doing is because I didn't actually want to create another symbol in the case of procedure call, we actually just want to reference an existing identifier. We don't want to make a new one. I refactored this by taking that code that walks the type tag nodes and is looking up the types and making the references for those. That's now in its own little builder function. So we can call that independently of making symbols. And then make symbol from node just uses that new function as well. So then in procedure call in the AST evaluator, I went back to what I was doing before. I grabbed the symbol node, I manually turn it into a qualified symbol T, and then I call, make tag type list from node, and that returns back my type reference list of T, and then I just use that everywhere. So I pass through the type parameters now for intrinsics, and I pass them through for regular procedure calls. So first, if we look at intrinsic, intrinsic now has a type reference list T on it for type parameters. We pass that into the factory function and into the constructor, and then we can also get a read-only reference to that list if we need it. And then the same is true for native Basecode procedure calls. So we have the type reference list T for the type parameters. We pass that through. And so now procedure call has access to any tag types that were a part of the procedure call. So that, and I tested that, that's all good. Our existing test cases pass. Everything works the way it should, and those pointers, those structures are making it into the right spots. So that's all good. So on the plumbing side of it, I think it's done. Now, since this is part 10 of Jeff trying to finish the parser, let's look at some things we need to do though back in the parser to kind of close off on this. So one of them, so like if we look at, actually, let me go to token. So, yeah, okay. So a couple things. One, I have some decisions to make. So I'm gonna just group these because I think it'll make it a little easier to talk about. Transmute. Map, where's map? There's map and new. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any others. I don't think there is, but let me just check real quick here. Yeah, Sea Lion is working like so much better now that OBS is not running on here. Which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. We live in 2018. Everything takes 1 terabyte of RAM, 1 petabyte of disk space, and spawns 2,000 processes. Yes, I am running OBS on a separate machine. There's a laptop. So this right here is my primary laptop. It's a 2018 MacBook Pro. To the left of it is a, I want to say this was a 2015, 2014, I think 2014 MacBook Pro. Yeah, I was trying to run them both on the same machine, and it was sucking wind. It was just not good. So I was having sound problems. Sea Lion was running slow. Yeah, lots of issues. So far, pretty good. Okay, I think that's everything. So where I was going with this, and the reason I singled these out, is because these now I had special cases for these in the Lexer and in the parser. And the reason they were special cased is because of the type tagging. But now, I guess technically tuple is not a party to this one, because he doesn't have type tags. Although, that may not always be the case, so I'm going to leave it in. So the question I have now is, I could actually get rid of a lot of extra code that I don't need anymore, because every one of these syntactically looks like a procedure call. So we already now we have generic plumbing that handles the syntax of these kinds of things. The only thing we really need to do is in the parser, we just need to make sure we create the right node type for them. But we can probably do that in a fairly common central place. We don't have to have special case tokens for them, and we don't have to have special case parsers for them. So my first target today is I'm trying to think of, okay, should I go through and consolidate all this down? So as an example, I have a map expression prefix parser. Well, other than the fact that it creates, well, I mean, two things. One, it does set the comma precedence. That is a unique aspect of it. So I do have to kind of consider that. But yeah, like literally everything else in here could be standard. And the thing is, the comma precedence is true for any procedure call, right? Like if I go to procedure call infix, yeah. Oops. Come on, Jeff. Yeah, so standard procedure call already handles this. And that's what they would become, right? If I didn't emit those special tokens, they would just become procedure calls. And so then the question is, no. So I already disambiguate on the compiler side intrinsics from regular procedure calls. I mean, we could easily add another condition in here. Hey, is it one of these special kinds of operators, new, cast, transient? I mean, I'm hesitant to call them intrinsics. I guess they could technically be that. And I could always do the refactoring in 2 steps, right? I could always kind of keep them as they are, treat them as a special case here, and then if they are truly kind of intrinsic-y, I could just, and that's a new word, I could just fold that, into that model. I hesitate to do like a 2-step-wise refactoring like that, all in one go. Because otherwise, I have transmute expression, right? So I could do that here, right? I could say, hey, is it one of these special kinds of symbols? If it is, it's not a standard procedure call. It's one of these other nodes. The other thing I have is this keyword. Oh, I wish they would fix that. I have this keyword literal parser. And how am I using that? So it's a prefix parser. Yeah, actually, we could do it that way, right? So we could consolidate all those into this one keyword parser. Because like true, nil, false, break, import, continue, those are all being handled by this one parser. So I could just consolidate all these others into that. Actually, that might not be a bad first step. Yeah. Because yeah, these are just like the individual parsing state for these is so simple. I just consolidate them all into this one spot. So yeah, let's do that. If we've got a new literal or what was my list? Okay, so let's look at those individual parsers now. New expression. So all of these are going to do the global comma precedence thing. So so like from here to here, this is just handling those type tags, which we already, at that point, we would be able to get very easily. I mean, so other than what's missing in the parser? At this point, not much. Switch, some kind of switch. And so I say switch, that doesn't mean it's gonna be exactly like switch, but conceptually that's missing. And lambda syntax, and that's pretty much it. Those are the two things that are not done. And so the refactorings I'm doing right now are kind of related to kind of cleaning up some long-standing issues with how type parameters and some other things were being handled in the parser. And I'm almost got that done. And then, yeah, then we can finish those last two cases. And then I would say, you know, I'm gonna let a day or two go by, let my brain think about it a little bit, but I'm gonna make another pass after I get those in there. And, you know, if nothing like really jumps out as majorly wrong or missing, I'm gonna consider the parser for the Bootstrap compiler to be 100% complete. And then we can move on to, then at that point we can live primarily in the compiler and code gen and get that stuff done. And then, like I've said before, I think the next major area of effort after I get the parser wrapped up is going to be it's going to be procedures. Code generation for those. And I say procedures because then that covers closures and scopes and stack management and all that good stuff, right? So, and I want to add, so probably one of the very first things that I want to do there is I want to introduce CFA into the code generation part of the compiler so that I can yet again rework register allocation so that it goes through like a dominator model. And then that's gonna, you know, my thought there is that's gonna make then implementing register spilling and everything fairly straightforward, and managing the code generation for stack should be approachable. Okay. So here's an interesting thing. Since I mentioned that I have to do a switch statement in Basecode, I'm now realizing that there is a scenario here that I wish I could do cleanly in C and C++. So here's an interesting scenario where I would like to fall through explicitly. I would like to define a variable, you know, that falls through, because the only unique thing about each of these is what node type you get. So of course I could, you know, just define the variable, I guess, yeah, what I would have to do in C or C++, I can't define a scope because that's going to break stuff. So then that gets weird too, right? Because really I want this all to be a related scope, but I can't do that. So I've now added that to my thought process in terms of like structurally what I might want out of a switch-like construct. Let's approach it the other angle then. The more I think about this, I think the procedure call route might be the easiest thing because it's like plumbing wise, it's all structurally what we want. Let's take a different approach. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the custom tokens. Okay, Lexer. Did I have tuple in there twice? I did. Dope. See, this is why it's good to do this kind of stuff. You find stupid things you've done. Okay. New literal. not sure I understand why it does that. I think maybe the USB audio, yeah, maybe the USB audio thing is just dying. It's cheap. That's one of the downsides to buying cheap stuff on Amazon. So maybe I'll add another one of those to my order when I get a better screen capture device. So what I was saying is I commented the code out because some of that code is going to have to go in other places. It just, they won't be in evaluator functions any longer. So I don't want to delete it yet because I need to shuffle some of it around. So what's going to end up happening now is the parser should treat things like cast, transmute, map, string, array, tuple. It should treat all those as procedure calls. And those should all show up in the translator under procedure call. Then we're going to need to refactor procedure call to disambiguate those properly and create the right nodes, the right elements. Excuse me. Okay, so let's do this. What test file am I running? Good. Okay, I think that's everything. Tuple, range, array, map. Oh, I didn't do new. Okay. So we're going to do new, tuple, range, array, map, cast, transmute. Those are the ones we're impacting. And I'm going to put a breakpoint in procedure call on the AST evaluator because I think the parser will be fine. It should interpret all those properly. And technically, range is already working this way. Yeah, okay, so what do we got here? Our symbol is so print. New, okay. And then type parameters for new is, where's my type parameters? Has one, yeah, which is the footy. The footy, is it? Sorry. Something broke. Unable to infer type U. Oh, did I not? Oh, because I'm not creating, damn, that's the problem. I'm not creating the element. Well, let's do it this way then. I can, let me do one at a time here. Breakpoint there. Procedure name, print, tuple. No, yeah, there isn't an intrinsic for that. There's a unique element. Yeah, and of course it's gonna stop because you don't have that. It's not creating that, so it can't do anything with it. So that's fine. Range should be an intrinsic. So intrinsic should be non-null here. Really what I'm doing right now is I'm just verifying that the parsing infrastructure didn't like seriously break. Yeah, interesting. Oh, we're on print, range. Yeah, there's our intrinsic. Array, this is gonna break, that's fine. And I just wanna make sure that we get to the right spot where I'm expecting to get to for all these. Then we can refactor the innards of this so that it generates the right elements. So that should be print. This should be map. We have two type parameters, which should be string. Yep. And U16. And then the argument list. Yep, that looks fine. Okay, perfect. Last two. Then we'll actually add we'll refactor the implementation into this so that everything gets wired back up again the way that it was. Print, cast is not an intrinsic. Transmute and cast are not intrinsics. So, yeah. Just make sure transmute, of course that's gonna blow up because, no, it won't. It's fine. I'm doing A. I thought I was doing B, doing A. I'm with it. Transmute, type parameter, okay. All right, wonderful. Okay, so the change to the tokenizing and parsing infrastructure, totally fine. This is what I was kind of driving towards with this refactoring, is that now that the parser kind of understands type tagged identifiers, all this just plumbs through this one general case. Just kind of nice. Okay. Now, how do I want to do this? So we have two scenarios. Scenario one is special case symbols, cast, transmute, map, array, tuple, new tuple, range, we don't need to worry about. That's okay. New tuple array map, yeah. Okay, so this is case one. And then otherwise, we fall into this, which handles intrinsics, foreign procedure calls, and native procedure calls. Native here meaning Basecode internal procedure calls. Then the question is, why are these not intrinsics? And the answer is, I don't really know. There isn't a very compelling reason that I'm thinking of right now. Other than they came along before I had really formalized the concept of intrinsics in the model. But certainly, I think you can make the argument that cast and transmute are, at a minimum, intrinsics. Now, tuple, that's kind of weird. It's like the others are a little strange because there is some translation time things happening here that are beyond just creating a procedure call wrapper or an intrinsic call wrapper. Let's do this. Here's what I'm going to do. So we're going to have a map. It's going to have cast. Something like that. And we have all the parts that we need, right? We have the name, we have the type parameters. So then inside each of these, we just do the do. And I'm not going to keep it this way. This is like my first stab at restructuring this. Okay, so let's go take a look at cast. Cast. Then transmute. Excuse me. This is not 100% right. We need to rework where it's getting some of the type parameters from, but that should be pretty easy. In fact, we don't have to call evaluate anymore. So tuple expression is big. I'm going to come back to that one because that's huge. Okay, so we already have type params, and we know that, oh, and we also already have the argument list, right? So we don't need to do that. And this just be type params 0, and even better, we don't need the cast because it's already the right thing. Come on, C-line, you can do it. It's just a hop to the left. And I don't need to do I think in the case of cast, we're only expecting one thing. Sure. There's not much in it at the moment. Most everything is done. So we can actually, I haven't tidied this up in a while. Create type identifier needs an overhaul. Yeah, this is done. We did that. Procedure call needs to support generic parameters. That's what I'm working on now, but technically I would say that's done. Proc expression needs to support overloaded procedures. That's not right. Intrinsic needs, yep, this is done. New type of generic, yep, that's done. And I haven't done array type, or array iterators or map iterators yet. So those are still out there. But that's what's, that's what it's in, that is what is in the to-do list. Now I also have stuff on GitHub that I've been kind of using to track bigger ticket things that I've been working on. So I don't know what the answer on that is yet, but we'll come back to it. going to comment that out for now because I'm not 100% clear on how I want to pass the location through there. We don't need that. We're going to come back to tuple. I mean, fundamentally, tuple is no different than these others. It's just that it's also generating a type, so there's a lot going on. And this one is the same. It's args element front. We're only expecting one. Okay, so those are wired in. There is a to-do feature in IntelliJ. I mean, they go through and they search for to-do and XXX and stuff. You know, I honestly very rarely use it. The SAS stuff, Drocklin, I ran into some legal problems there, which are ongoing, and so that stuff is on hold. Yeah, I mean, I've been using the GitHub projects thing, which is okay, right? It has little swim lanes and lets you drag cards around. The problem with that stuff, right, is, and this is, I guess, partially one of the reasons I like agile methodologies with index cards and stuff were always kind of a challenge, is those things are high level, right? They're like, here's this grouping of things that you're gonna do, and it may be one task, it may be 500 tasks. And that's why I always end up, you know, with the text file, because the text file is just so easy to work with, you know? If I need to add a whole bunch of descriptions and notes and stuff, I can do it, and when I'm done, I just move it from one grouping to another, and in the UI, it's the same thing. It's like, it's inferring to-dos from comments and things like that, and it's a lot of clicking, and yeah, I don't know. I'm just old and curmudgeon-y. So, all right. So we didn't do tuple, so let's comment out tuple. But everything else should be okay. So let's give that a shot. Yes. Yay. Look at that. Okay. So now some of this doesn't generate valid code yet, but the cast is correct. The transmute is correct. So that's good. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So now let's see. so I think it can safely do a couple things. We get rid of this. Okay, we're gonna leave tuple. We gotta come back to that. Okay. So we tidied up some extra or some unneeded stuff at the AST evaluator level. And everything is now plumbing through that one mechanism, which is super great. Okay, so now in parser, I think we can safely kill some things. Okay, we don't need that. We don't need this. Wow, yeah. This is the better. Glad I hit the reset button and decided to question my initial judgment. This is a much better approach. I'm getting rid of a lot of extra code that I don't need. Great. The parser is becoming so much smaller right before our eyes. Yes, smaller is better, absolutely. And it's not even just smallness, like this just conceptually feels like it has better bones to it. You know, like these things are intrinsically related to each other, and having different ways of handling them is just, maybe it was okay, it worked, but it's just duplicate stuff. And more areas for weird, oh, I fixed that problem here, but not there. And yeah, just, it naturally fits this approach. It's much better. Okay, so I know some folks asked some questions here. Do you have a photo of your setup? I can take a photo real quick. Hold on one sec. Any opinions on MongoDB? Yeah, I mean, you know, Hold on one sec. Oops, different laptop, Jeff. The music was just a little loud for me. So I had a period, I had a phase, I'm gonna call it a phase. I had a phase, and this was way back in the day, right? This was in the 90s, when I was really heavy into Lisp and Smalltalk, and, you know, I was really excited about, and specifically Smalltalk, I was really excited about Smalltalk's interpretation of objects. And, you know, I used Gemstone, which was an object database for Smalltalk, which is really cool. There was some really neat stuff there. There were issues, right? But it was pretty cool. And for a while, I was pretty down on relational databases for transactional processing systems. And it's interesting because you have to kind of understand my history, right? I started my career at IBM, and contrary to what you might think, you know, in the 80s and 90s, well, and even to this day, quite frankly, you know, IBM has DB2, and DB2 certainly is used more today than it was then, but, you know, the mainframe is always, mainframe and mid-range systems have always had kind of proprietary file-based, you know, ISAM type lookup. And IBM also had IMS, which was, they still have it, is a hierarchical database system, very fast, very, very fast, very efficient, and not JavaScript, let's put it that way. And these were all non-relational things, right? And ironically, right, COD and relationalism, relational databases came out of IBM to some extent because of this backlash of all these systems essentially, you know, had proprietary, storage mechanisms, right? And I would hesitate to call them application specific, and that was a term that was used a lot in the day. But they were less general, right, than SQL. Now, anyway, that's to let you know that when I started building things, I was using storage mechanisms that were not SQL. So this concept of NoSQL is by no means new. In fact, if anything, I would say from the years, I'm gonna say like 1995, or maybe go a little earlier, 1994 to, you know, sometime in the mid-aughts. So I'm gonna say sometime like 2007 or 2008. You know, that was like the bubble of relational databases from my perspective, right? You know, when I started building software, nobody used a relational database, and everybody was skeptical of using something like that for non-reporting purposes, right? You never built your application on top of a relational database when it came to transactional processing. You used something that was much more low level and efficient, and then you might populate data into a relational database for reporting purposes. But that trend shifted, right? And and then ironically, it started to shift back, right? And really MongoDB, I guess, historically, if you want to look at it that way, MongoDB was kind of the first, right? They were the poster child, if you will. They were not the first object database at all. They, you know, what I mean is, again, in that 2007, 2008 timeframe, that was kind of the reawakening of application developers saying, you know, this sucks. You know, I've got all this code and I'm writing embedded SQL everywhere, or I'm having to call stored procedures and it's inconvenient, and I'm having to constantly transform things, between layers, and it's annoying and it's slow and it just adds overhead. But since those days, I've come to recognize that the flaw really was not relational set theory or relational databases. There are flaws with modern commercial relational databases. And C.J. Date wrote a book, I believe it's called The Relational Manifesto, and it was a good book. And then I read that way back in the 90s sometime. And Date's position was that relational databases are the shit, but the issue is that they never really finished specifying SQL and DDL to the extent that they should have. And so C.J. Date's position was always that the language that was embedded inside of relational databases was insufficient to materialize the promise of a relational database as the one true set of facts for application building. And all these years later, I'm inclined to agree with him, right? So that sets up what I'm about to say. MongoDB, in my opinion, has usefulness for an extremely narrow set of use cases. If, and only if, the data that you are storing in MongoDB, and this goes for Cassandra, this goes for Mongo, for Couch, any of them, doesn't matter. They're all the same. If that data is intrinsically, inherently document-based, right, and you'll know, then it's okay. If that data that you're going to store in MongoDB is non-transactional, then it's fine. If that data, if you can sustain loss of that data, and the system upon which MongoDB is integrated will continue to function, right? Or okay, that was fun. I bought new batteries and I bought a new battery charger. I brought the batteries I had in Utah. These definitely do not last as long. I don't know why. Anyway, sorry about that. The batteries in my lapel unit died that time. So, where was I at? Yeah, I was talking about MongoDB. So again, if the data you are putting in Mongo is not transactionally critical, can be recreated, then Mongo's fine. And there are quite a few systems, right, where you have this kind of transient state information. Like if I was building an application and I wanted to store like session data maybe, or user configuration data, I might put it in something like Mongo or Cassandra. That'd be fine, right? Redis probably also would be okay. But if it's transactional, right? If it's account information, if it's purchase information, if it's inventory, if it's, things that are important, I would not use any of the NoSQL databases for those. They're not, there's a lot of issues there. My use case for MongoDB is that I have essentially a client UI that allows the user to generate their own tables, columns, and a suite of, yeah, that's perfect, right? If you have like config data, something that if it's lost, it might inconvenience the system or the user slightly, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah, Mongo's fine. Not going to be an issue. Your failure rate could potentially be higher on a percentage basis because you're using Mongo. But again, if it's data that can be lost or recovered through some procedure, then I think it's okay. I need to take a short break. I'll be back. And Slayer Darth said, "You seem to be streaming fewer hours these days." Yes, because I am working. So my schedule has been a unmitigated disaster the past couple of months, and that's actually come to an end. Although I might have some other engagements, but the weird schedule I had where it was really kind of causing me to move things around a lot. That's over. So, but yeah, I have been streaming less because it's been difficult to fit it into my day recently. But yeah, I should be able to get back to a more consistent schedule, I hope. I'm going to take a short break. I'll be right back. Hopefully I set this up right. Okay, I'm back. I have the Kofifi, and somebody asked about my setup. This is not my main setup. This is what I've got on the road. So that's it. That is a camping table. That is a cheap chair. And yeah. So anyway, so whoever asked for that forgot it. But yeah, that's where I'm sitting. So all right. Yeah, so S. Wills and Slayer Darth were talking about how losing data doesn't ever go over well. And yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that as techies, we can have all these conversations about, okay, this is fail fast and this is, eventual consistency and all this stuff, right? But at the end of the day, without question, the customers are almost always, they just don't understand any of that stuff. Drachman says, what's the stand for the laptops? Does that work well? I believe, if I remember correctly, they're called M stand. Yeah, this. I'm gonna go there. And do they work? Yeah, they work. They don't have any ports or anything on them. They're very basic, but they raise the laptop up, which is primarily what I want. It just makes it easier for me to look at the screen. All right, so let's review this set of changes. And, oh, did I do everything in the Lexer? I don't think I have quite yet. See, this is what happens. I lose track. Yeah. Okay. Just make sure I didn't break anything with that. Yeah, Postgres is a very awesome database platform. I mean, it's very well written in my opinion. It's not perfect, but it has a lot of support for, it's a good platform. SQL Server's not bad. I mean, you know, T-SQL's a little bit goofy, but it's better than it was ever. Chug. Okay, good. Let's review now. Okay, so in our type tagged identifier test source file, I added a test custom struct so we could use the new operator. And then range, this is something I was doing for the for loops. That's parsing fine, doing what it's supposed to do. It creates the intrinsic. Everything except tuple now is handled, and this is all going through one, they're all considered procedure calls by the parser, and they're being disambiguated in the compiler and turned into the correct elements. And then, so in token, we got rid of, so at the very lowest level, the tokenizer, lexer, I used to have specific tokens for new literal, map literal, cast literal. Those are all gone now. So, oh, no, I took them out of here. Yeah, so I took out those token types, took out the name mappings, took out the static instances of those in the token file. Don't need those anymore. In the to-do, I moved some things into the done category that are actually done. In parser, we don't need, there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't need anymore. So don't need the cast infix parser, don't need the transmute, and got rid of the static instances of these, got rid of the mappings for the ones that we don't need anymore. And then in the CPP file, I had lots of helper functions that are no longer needed. So create cast node, the map prefix parser, cast, transmute. I don't need any of these anymore. Don't need the cast infix parser. The procedure call infix parser, I renamed the local variable just to node, so it's a little bit more generic. Then in lexer, got rid of all the lexers for the tokens that we no longer need to support explicitly, right? And then got rid of those entries in the map. Right? So that's some code that comes out that we don't need to have anymore. Then the AST evaluator, we don't need the custom evaluators for these things because we don't have unique AST nodes. Oh, I didn't update the AST tree. Need to do that. Let's do that. So got rid of those, and refactored procedure call, which is down here. Yeah. So as a first pass, I just created a map, local map, and moved the implementation for some of these things in here. We still need to do tuple. I'm gonna, because I want to go through another cleanup pass on this, but just as a first step, right? That's all being handled now in procedure call, and we're gonna leave the tuple expression code commented because that's gonna come in the next step. A couple things. Let me go to AST evaluator, because as I was looking at it, this can be static. Come on. Then you need to go to AST node T and you don't need those. Oops. Okay. There may even be a couple of extra ancillary nodes I don't need anymore, but I'll start there. Ooh. That's interesting. Yes, today was the delete code day. That's a good day. Okay. Hey, that's not good. What did I do? Oh, garbage. I know what I did. Yeah, I gotta fix that. Let's do that. Come on, see what. You can do it. That's what happens when you make it static. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Forgot about that. Oops. Wrong one. Yeah, okay. Good. All right. So then this is going to be builder, scope, mangler, result, type params, args. They are now stateless. Well, maybe not. You know, I've had this problem before. I think I know. I need to read the documentation on that again because it compiles, but I've run into this before where if I use auto for the parameter type, like it compiles, it's okay, but it doesn't run properly. And I've run into that before. I think I'm doing something wrong, but yeah, it's just weird. I'm not sure why that's the case, but yeah, I gotta read the documentation on that again. There's something subtle I'm missing. Okay, so all that so that the map could be static. So we're basically passing all the state into the functors now. They're not borrowing any state from the enclosing scope, which is fine because these are probably ultimately going to get moved out of this scope anyway, so that's good. So the AST changes I made had nothing to do with it. It was just I had made this static. So anyway, that's good now. So let's look at AST. So I got rid of the node types I'm no longer using, got rid of them out of the name mapping table, and got rid of node building functions that no longer need. So even more code. Displitz says, good morning, how's the project coming along? It's coming along well, I think. And then in AST Evaluator, I had to refactor because I made the map static, because eventually this is going to move out. So instead of being able to capture scope for the Lambda functions, I am passing the state into them explicitly now. But otherwise, it should behave exactly the same, which it does. And then in the parser, I had to make one other change here. So this is type parameter nodes for generic procedure declarations and type declarations. This is a bit different than the change that I made for type tagging. This is going to remain. This was doing a parse or expect expression where it was saying it was expecting a tuple here. That's for type constraints. But technically a tuple now from a parsing perspective is just a procedure call. So we're going to have to add some extra code here to verify that. All right. Let me check that in. Okay, so tuple. Yeah, well, that's good, Synox. Yeah, I was without power for several hours this morning, so even though I could, my laptops would run for a while, I probably would burn through the battery on them very quickly, and other infrastructure stuff was out, so. And the rinky-dink UPS I have with me, you know, it's good enough probably for me to like shut down instantly, but beyond that, it's not like the one I have at home that can probably run my whole setup for like 20-30 minutes. this one had to be the oddball. Here's what we're going to do. Time 10. What is this? I am working on a compiler for a programming language called Basecode. All right, what am I doing here? I don't particularly like this solution, but again, to get everything covered, and then we can figure out how I want to restructure from here. Everything's in one spot, right? That's the goal here, is to get all this refactored down into this one location. Then we can clean it up. Okay, so tuple, special case for now. So let's put that back in and give it a run. How'd you get so smart? I don't actually think I'm all that smart. I've talked about this before on stream, but there are different kinds of smartness. There's different kinds of intelligence, right? There are people that I have met, okay, who, like, they can make money like the way you and I drink water or put our clothes on. Like, they can just look at the market, and when I say market, I don't necessarily mean stocks. I mean, they can just look at things that are going on, and instantly they see how to put themselves into a situation, and they can make money, and they can make a lot of it. And there are people who are just really good with their hands, right? There are people who can build things, make things physically, and it's very easy for them, right? So there isn't just one kind of smartness, right? And of course, there's book smarts, right? There's academic smarts. And all right, tuple is good now. So, okay. So we've successfully consolidated that down. And my OCD is kicking in. I mean, I think, again, I've said this on the stream before, and I know this is not a universally shared opinion, but it's my observation that academic smartness, right, being able to go into a schooling situation and get high marks, that is an exercise of memory capability. Almost, I would say it's like 80-20, right? If you have 20% general reasoning capability and you have the rest 80% phenomenal memory, then in most academic situations you're going to excel. And when I say phenomenal memory, I mean phenomenal memory. Like, maybe not, you know, perfect memory, but pretty close, right? Especially as it relates to abstract and disparate facts, right? That's a very special kind of skill set. You know, I'm sure most folks watching have seen like Darren Brown and other people like that who, like, they have over the years honed their skill set, the ability to memorize arbitrary things. And just like I could say that anybody could learn to program, which is probably a true statement, it's also not a complete statement. So somebody like Darren Brown saying, well, anybody can learn to do what I do. Yes, probably technically you could. But again, some people are going to be much better suited to that than others. And yeah, so. No. Everybody sucks at programming. Even I suck at programming. And I've been doing it for a long time. You have to slowly improve your ability, right? And go from being whatever level of suckiness you're at to being slightly less sucky. I mean, believe me, man. Every programmer, even people who have, I mean, look, I mean, this is not in any way like dissing somebody like Casey or John, but I mean, look at how long Casey's been doing Handmade Hero. Look at how long John's been working on Jay. Look at how long it took John to get The Witness out. That's not, again, this is not a condemnation. This is just an observation of reality, right? these things are complex. It's difficult to do this stuff. And anybody can write a toy, anything, right? A little toy program that does nothing in one sitting. That's not the hard part. It's never the hard part. It's when that toy goes from 1,000 lines to 100,000 lines or 200,000 lines or 1,000,000 lines of whatever programming language you're using, and there's keeping all that that state, that model in your head is, again, it's like a skill, right? It is a skill. It takes time to get to the point where you can do that on demand and flexibly. And even then, when you can do that, it's not perfect, right? You forget things that you did, right? You forget things, you misthink of things. Like I had myself all twisted up on the spread operator. I have no idea what my brain was doing, right? But like I just spun my wheels on that, for no reason really in hindsight, but it happens. So yeah, whatever level you're at, you just incrementally improve. And the way you incrementally improve is you put the time in, right? As Stephen King says, he likes to try to get 6 pages a day. I always say I like to try to code at least 5 hours a day. And so, it's a long path. So don't be too down on yourself. You have to be reflective. You have to be willing to observe what you're doing and ask, is this right or wrong? From your own perspective. It's not, I'm going to go take a consensus of 5,000 people and, have them all tell me I'm wrong. It's for yourself, like what I'm doing here, right? I had a sense that I could eliminate lots of code and make this much simpler and easier. And in a sense, I told myself, what you have works, but it's not good enough. Make it better. So you have to be willing to do that. But there's a difference between being objectively critical about what you're doing and trying to improve it and beating yourself up. You don't want to beat yourself up. You don't want to call yourself stupid. You don't want to say, I suck all the time. And because then you lose motivation. Then you don't really want to even try. But if you're objectively critical about stuff, then that's different. And it's subtle, right? There's a fine line there. But that's all I gotta say about that. Most CS programs are not real engineering courses or real science courses. If they were, very few people would be able to complete them, and those universities want to keep mass producing degrees. Yeah. Computer science is, again, I'm gonna get in trouble, but computer science to me is just, it's an offshoot of the math department. So those are mathematics degrees. And if you're really good, and there's a lot of good stuff in computer science. I'm not saying there isn't. Again, it's like anything. But it is true, right, that software engineering is not really engineering. Not the way that like electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or, chemical engineering is engineering. But admittedly, there is a really key distinction there though. And that distinction is, look, chemical engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, they all have one thing in common. Their underpinnings is physics, and physics underpinnings is reality. And that's a very concrete thing, right? We can observe reality and say, this is true, that's not, right? Programming is all about abstract things that don't exist. The machine that you're working on exists. So there is some physical reality that grounds you, which is why, like, I always tell people to start at that level. Learn what your reality is, learn what the machine does. Learn assembly language, learn a little bit about, at the hardware level, how these things tie together, and then that's going to ground you when you start doing more abstract things. But the challenge with software in general is it's not real, right? I mean, it's anything could be real, but I got to really fix that. My stream alerts box is all goofy. What happened to that? Ay, ay, ay. Good old OBS, man. Come on. Okay, that should be much better now. I have no idea why that happened. So let's see here. This 23 says, sometimes being real dumb helps me a lot. When I write programs in courses, they're usually much more compact and simple than other people's because I'm too dumb. Yeah, simple is, again, that was the theme of today. Simple is better. And I wouldn't call that dumb. I would just call that simple. Yeah, programming is about mastering complexity. I agree with that. Hey, what language are you working on? I am building a compiler right now in C++ 17, which is for a programming language called Basecode. And that's a language that I'm designing from scratch. And getting back to that, so I put tuple back into my test program here. And then in AST Evaluator, I shuffled some stuff around because I have OCD. And I added make tuple literal. So I could take that tuple code that was commented out and move it into that. And then instead of having this, because I would have to pass a whole bunch of extra state to this, I just broke out tuple because it's really kind of a very different scenario. So temporarily, I have a special case here for it to call that make tuple literal. And so that works. Again, the primary reason I'm doing it that way is because I want to get all that code in one spot, right? Consolidate all that down, and then I can make additional passes to clean that stuff up. Because I think like cast and transmute probably should become intrinsics maybe. And so, yeah, I'm gonna think about how I wanna maybe recategorize some of those things. So the AST translator, or the AST evaluator is at 1988 lines right now. And yeah. So we didn't get rid of that much code, but enough. All right. Okay, Now, oops, in GitHub, for my parser tasks, I have switch, for loop, and lambdas. So let's go back, let's pop the stack. Let's go back to for loop really quickly. And again, this is from the perspective of parsing. I believe from a parsing perspective, I have what I need now. Yeah, so now range allows you to specify type parameter so you can control what the type is that would get generated or inferred for the induction variable. Now I think for the map one, I kind of remember there was maybe an issue. It's not parsing. Saying it can't infer the type, but there is a type there. Hey, Vinod. So let's run this one, step through it. If it's getting the type, then I'm okay. I think maybe all right, so what is the left-hand side here? Should be a symbol that has a type on it, which it does. And that type is map iterator. Okay, so the parser is doing its job. I'm gonna guess it's the translator that's not handling it correctly. Oh yeah, okay. This is, okay. The issue is that we're not creating the induction variable, so that's why I can't find it. But let me just, so the right hand side is a map, and the left hand side is symbol element. Yeah. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're getting the symbol, and type reference is for that struct. Yeah. Okay. So we have a type reference. So that's not good. The body's null. Okay. So that may not be good. Okay, context node children. Huh, it's weird. Oh, Jeff, dummy. God. Although, no, that should be fine. Okay. That would explain why I can't find it. Don't. Chicken egg, chicken egg. Okay, so we're just gonna make a scope block. This is similar to like how we do procedures for parameters and things like that, and local variables. Then we're going to evaluate the identifier, adding it into that for scope. So if we look at this block now, there should be an identifier in here, which there is, right? So now we have an identifier, it, and yeah. And so now we're going to evaluate the block that comes from the for loop in the context of that new parent block. Now we actually get the block because now it finds it. And huzzah. Now what's interesting is it said it couldn't infer the type. It didn't say it couldn't find it. So I should make a note in the to-do list. Bug identifiers not found are returning a type inference error instead. So that's minor, but annoying nonetheless. There you go, boom. Okay, so so this actually works, and let's take a look at for arrays, and it's going to be something similar, right? It's going to be an array iterator is going to have array pos kind. So this is going to be something like first, medial, and first, medial, last. So kind is array pos kind. Index is, let's say, U32, and the value isn't any. So now, oops, can't spell. Oh, C++. That's going to get worse. The more I start writing stuff and going back and forth. Oh yeah, I have my breakpoint here. Okay, what are we complaining about first? Oh yeah, I gotta fix enums. Which that's not a parsing problem. That is a compile type generation problem. There we go. Okay, so good. Huzzah. All right. So I'm gonna say the parsing for arrays or for loops. We got ranges, we got for loops, or Jesus, I can't talk. We got ranges, arrays, and maps. So from a parsing translating perspective, I think that is done. So I'm going to mark that one as complete. Yay! Close. And that's good news. Okay, so now that leaves us with switch and lambdas. So let's review what we got here. So actually there's another bug, enum type creation to type fields and increment value. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so in the for loop arrays test scenario, I just built a little iterator in line here to kind of prove to myself that it's parsing, we're getting the type in the scope, the induction variable is now fixed, that's in scope, that's being resolved, it's all good. So all that's left now is to do all the code generation. Then in the AST evaluator, the bug with the for loop stuff was where it couldn't identify the induction variable properly, as I had a chicken and an egg case. So I created a enclosing scope that where the kind of the hidden, not hidden, but local variables can be. So there's a block or a scope that has the induction variable in it. Then we evaluate the actual block, and that is parent. The parent for that is this scope that we created, right? And then the variable resolution, identifier resolution works perfectly at that point. So that was the bug there. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to tests and let's run all of our stuff. And good. Ooh, or maybe not so good. Okay, this one's normal. This one's normal. So I'm okay with those, but arrays is failing now. So we're getting a pair. Interesting. So arrays. Oops. Okay, let's figure out what broke here. Hey, FD God 92. Yeah, we're getting a pair somewhere. That's not right. Okay. I bet. Man, that's loud. Okay, so that's fixed. Yeah, crap. Why is that broken? Because it's confused. Fudge crackers. I know why. I know why. So I bet if I go back, so let's look at array expression. No, where is it? Array literal. Array subscript. No, that's not the one I want. No, it's array expression. Darn it. Okay. Yes, I see the problem. The array parser does not go into global or into global mode for commas. So let's talk about commas. Commas are so fucked up. So there are two modes, dynamic precedence in the parser. So the default mode is that I can have something like A, B is equal to 3, 4, right? This default puts the precedence of the comma below the other operators, like assignments and things. So then you can have things like this. You can get a comma set on the left and you can get a comma set on the right. But in a lot of our literal expressions, we want to be able to have comma separated lists of assignments. So we can support name parameters and maps and all that good shit. But when we go into that so there's a mode where I can change dynamically the precedence of the comma, essentially, so that in global mode, what happens is we get this, we get that, we get the, it's like it doesn't, the precedence changes. So long story short, our procedure call is not being properly parsed in this case because of the comma situation. So like I could definitely fix it for this one scenario, right? So if token value is not array, then do this, right? So curiously, let's see if that fixes the issue. What's the best way to learn C++? I know C# and Java, not expert. Find the Jumpstart videos on MS site. Just got here. Nice seeing mixed type arrays. Yeah, that fixes the issue. Ooh, that's not good. Something blew up. Crap, yeah. That's blowing lots of stuff up. Ooh, that's really bad. Why? damn it. Such an idiot. Defer was deferring until the end of that scope. Oops. So Lorry Master just got hammer. I see mixed type arrays. They're not mixed type, although I guess technically, yeah, I haven't really gotten to the code gen side of that yet. There probably will be some coaxing there, but I'm confused though why. Yeah. I probably would guess. Assignment. Yeah. All right. That one I'm gonna have to think about, because that's a problem. Because I was thinking about that's gonna happen, like if you wanted to have map of maps or map of arrays, or you know, I have to think about that, how I'm gonna fix that. Okay, so for now, that's gonna be, we fixed a bunch of other stuff, but that one's broken. So we're gonna run with that broken until I can figure out a way to fix it. So this is a comma operator thing, so I gotta think about how I'm gonna fix that. This is normal. We haven't solved the underlying issue there, and this is normal. So, but all the others are working. So that's good. Let me make a comment here. What's interesting? Oh no, because yeah. I mean, worst case, the reason array was working before is because I wasn't going into that state. You know, I gotta think about that. Always something. Okay. 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 So what's next then is switch and lambda. So with lambda, I think I'm going to have to use a similar approach in the lexer so I can disambiguate the syntax. But here's the good news about the lambda stuff, I think. The good news is that I think it's, I mean, again, it's just a procedure, just different syntax for procedure declaration. So, with that in mind, essentially, I think most of the work's just going to be in the lexer to disambiguate that it is a lambda procedure expression, and then we can pretty much just reuse the plumbing of the procedure expression in the parser, right? Because it's going to build the same structure. It's just not, the tokens are a bit different. So I think that's the next thing I'm going to do. If we look at there's actually two things here that we have to do. One is I have to also fix the type resolution. Like, this parses properly now, but this doesn't know how to, okay, it's an alias and this is a type parameter, so this is what it is. It doesn't quite know how to do that, so I gotta fix that, and that's gonna be pretty big.
Electronic stimuli transmit across wireless networks. Our desires, our emotions, our needs.
Yeah, so it can't parse this. This is the part I have to fix. And so we'll do that first. I think tomorrow, that'll be the first thing I do, is enhance the lexer to properly disambiguate this, and then that'll drive us into a parser that will handle this case. Again, the structure it's going to create is really the same structure as this. It's just that the syntax is different. So, and then we'll also have to handle this kind of a scenario. I don't know, yeah, I don't know. I gotta think about that. It's either I pass it through like that, or, yeah, it's a question mark. I gotta think about that. So there's two things there that we gotta figure out. You know, parsing the lambda syntax and having that create a valid procedure expression structure, and then when we have an alias like this, how are type parameters coming across, right? Like in C++, in most languages actually, this isn't really something you can do very cleanly, right? Make an alias to something that's generic. I mean, you can sort of do it in C++, but it's nasty. I mean, it's really, really nasty. But I see this being a fairly common occurrence. So, yeah. So I got to think about how I want to do that. I think I know the approach I'm going to take for this. And the other special thing we have to do here for lambdas is a little bit different. See, in a standard procedure declaration, you can't exclude the type. That's not valid. But in a lambda, I want you to be able to, right? Because it's shortcut syntax. So what that means is we may have to parse this, or not parse per se, but we might have to use like an unknown type or some kind of placeholder that we can resolve later. So I'm going to have to think about that. Because the parser has no idea what the context is of this. The translator would potentially, But yeah, so I'll have to think about that too. Because ultimately, what you would want to do is you wouldn't want to say, okay, this is being used in a spot where the type of that is this, therefore, this is some T and that's some T. And maybe that's what we do for lambdas. Maybe what we do is they're just like a type parameter by default that when we get into instantiation for the procedure later, we just handle it that. I think that's probably what I'll do. I think that makes sense. It's lambda syntax. That's what you're looking at, yeah. No, it's all one pass. Of course, it depends on your definition of pass here. It's not like C or C++. Parsing is distinct from everything. So the file's only ever parsed once. But if we have unknown things, there is an explicit step that tries to resolve those after everything's done, right? So after all modules have been parsed, then we go resolve types. But there's also another aspect of that too, and that's where I think I'm coming down to in my mind, is that this is really a this is a procedure instantiation scenario. So I think what we probably would end up doing here is the type of left-hand side, right-hand side is going to be some kind of specialized internal type parameter that then when we instantiate that at compile time, at code generation time, we then will have the context of we'll have the broader context of, okay, QSort has this kind of prototype, this kind of procedure definition. This is the type of that parameter. Therefore, in the procedure call, this is what we're going to do, right? So essentially, I guess to state that a different way, so when I'm talking about instantiation here, this is a procedure call. So in procedure call, what's going to happen is we're going to say, which we're not doing this right now at all, right? Like procedure call is not doing type verification or anything yet. That's one of the big things we have to do is we're going to say, okay, we're going to call QSort. We need to instantiate QSort because it's a generic procedure. So therefore, we have to look at the parameters. Okay, what is this? Oh, it's an array of U32s. Okay, so that's T is a U32. Okay, so then now what the comparator, comparator is a procedure that takes a T and that's a pointer for left-hand side, right-hand side. And so then we would recursively say, okay, we need to instantiate a version of this procedure that is able to, conform to these types. And as an example, right, like if you said that, this could only be a U32, right, then if you did a U16 or you did an S16 or whatever, it would bomb, right? Because it might be able to generate this procedure, which has no constraint on T, but it would not be able to generate this one because it does. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. Now again, my goal here is primarily the parsing side of it. There's tons of stuff to do on the code generation side, but I'm trying to draw a line between those so I can kind of say, okay, the parser can generate the model and it can roughly get translated into something that's workable. And then from there, we need to deal with all the realities of code instantiation. So I believe that will be next. So I just played around with this test file a little bit. All right. I'm going to push that stuff up to the GitHubs. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think, you know, the Lambda stuff, probably going to take all weekend. It's going to take some time because there's some complexity here. And then in the meantime, I'm going to think about, you know, what I really want to do for Switch. I really have not put too many CPU, you know, wetware CPU cycles toward it. I should do that and think about what that should look like. And yeah, so I'm going to think about that too. And yeah, we're slowly it's getting there. And then, yeah, then on to bigger and better things. So, all right, well, for the most part, my display capture device seems to be working pretty good today. It didn't flake out too much. Fixed the contrast, that it looks much better now. Had one audio glitch, not sure why, well, other than the batteries dying, but not sure why that happens. So hopefully that will be better. And I'm gonna look online and see if I can find higher rated display capture and USB audio devices, see if I can find something that has really high ratings and people say is solid. And according to OBS, I've dropped 60 frames during the entire stream, but otherwise it's been streaming constant at 4 megabits, so that's pretty good. So anyway, yeah, I'm happy with the two laptop setup. I think it works great. You know, this one is a little bit snappier. I'm gonna give Sea Lion a bit more memory, see if that helps. Because it does still pause in a couple spots, but Switch isn't in the think anymore. It's moved. Actually, nothing's in think anymore. Now everything's over here in do. So yeah, I'm using two laptops to stream. One of them is dedicated to OBS and streaming, and the other is the one I'm working on. So I do have Discord and the Twitch chat interface up on my work laptop, because then I can quickly type between those. But yeah, otherwise everything else is running on the OBS machine, which is good. Because I mean, it's hovering right around 12% CPU for OBS. So, okay, thanks everybody. Oh, hey, Brooke Zerker, how's it going? Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm going to wrap up for today, but I will be back online tomorrow. And tomorrow I will, barring another major ice storm or something, I will try to be online at my scheduled time, my scheduled start time. So no more starting early and all that. The reason I ended up starting late today is because I had no power. So there's just no way I was going to be able to pull it off until I got power back. So hopefully tomorrow when I wake up and go to start my normal time, I'll have power, and yeah, the streams I'll slowly start ramping back up to 3 or 4 hours, at least for the foreseeable future. And I'm probably going to stream over the weekend a little bit too this weekend, because I don't really have much else going on. And yeah, I really would like to try to push this weekend to get the all the parser stuff done, and then that starting next week puts me in a good position to really get into procedures and stack stuff and all the other fun things that have to get done. But yeah, so everybody have a good day, and I will see you all tomorrow. So thanks for dropping by. See you guys.